What up? What up? Um, yeah, day 5, 6 of live streaming every day for 90 days to see how this goes. Um, Actually, pretty exhausted today. I didn't like get any sleep today. Um, yeah, I've been up for I did go to sleep for like 5 hours. Like 1:30 to about 6:30 in the afternoon. So I feel like shit. I'm tired, very foggy. But I got to get up and do some work. I got to do these live streams. So that's where we be. That's where we're at. We're at it, baby. We're at it. Um, this is the first video. AI dependency and the decline in human originality. This dude doesn't have like a big following or anything. The Gen X heathen. But the title was intriguing to me, and that's what I'm going off of. It's an intriguing title. Sounds like it could be a good video. We'll see if it is. So far, I like the background. I like the setting. We'll see though. We'll see. So let's check it out.
I thought I'd catch the sounds of nature as ambience, and just got me thinking really quick about how I hate the artificiality of everything now. It's been going on for a long time, really. People are kind of plastic themselves. They're kind of all fake themselves. And specifically now, I'm kind of talking about AI, which I use AI for thumbnails, and AI is a great tool to assist you with things. It's a good assistant. But I've noticed this trend where people are making their content entirely of AI. It's almost like when you watch these videos, you can tell with that artificial voice, usually a similar or same voice for other AI videos.
It's true.
Artificial video. And even the script is artificial, oftentimes incorrect.
Yeah, it's true.
It's kind of
a lot of improvement needed.
It's very bland and generic.
But that's how it starts. And I think it's going to get better. That doesn't mean that I believe the AI is going to be more creative. I think it's going to learn different patterns of creativity that work better for virality, for comedic effect, for different emotions. It'll be able to better replicate that, in my opinion. Not that it's becoming creative, but it'll be better at reading more abstract patterns that are kind of hard to categorize.
And I have to imagine that people who rely on that as being very bland and very generic. Sorry. And I think this is the height of dependency on technology, where, yes, it's a great tool and the tools keep improving and they keep offering us new ways to accomplish things. But when it comes to human creativity and uniqueness, it's just nothing. It's nothing. It's almost non-existent anymore.
The biggest creative act a human can do is make a child, and AI will never be able to do that. There's something unique about humans. And yeah, I mean, I get where he's coming from. I get it.
So I would have to say that looking at how people rely exclusively on this technology, I wonder what kind of person that is. I just imagine someone sitting in their mom's basement, never had an original idea of their own, too socially awkward to use their own voice, at least in the video, too socially awkward to show themselves.
But I don't know if any of those things are bad. Is it natural to want to get on camera. You know, being on camera is not natural. It's not necessarily a good thing to do. Maybe it gives them less screen time because they can automate a whole system in place to have them generate income while they can go out and be about their life, right? They can just totally offshoot the responsibility of generating income from these various skill sets that one can develop to generate their own income, to make their own business. They could delegate that and just manage it. That's not necessarily a bad thing. And it could make them better socially because then it gets them off of the screens, makes them more present in the world and less trapped in this, one, the screen, two, the 9 to 5 kind of new way of work, because the 9 to 5 is a new way of working. We have not worked like that before. I mean, if you look throughout history, we worked far less than we ever have, like than we currently do now. So, yeah, I mean, I get where he's coming from, but I also think it's too much of a pessimistic view.
Insecure or lazy to take the time to really think deeply about what they want to talk about or what they want.
But that is a good point, though. I do agree with that. That there are a lot of people who are very sensitive and delegate the responsibility of thinking about higher level things to trusted authorities. But to their defense, I would say, can you blame them? Every time anybody has an original thought in our current society, they are penalized. I am a very original thinker in a lot of ways. I have a lot of ideas. I'm very creative naturally. It's a gift of mine. And I also think that everybody is creative, but there are different abilities of creativity. Anyway, one thing that I noticed about this is, give me a second. I don't know why like I said, I have gotten like 4 hours of sleep. So let me rewind this a little bit. It'll trigger my mind.
To take the time to really think deeply.
That's right. Why can you blame them? Because, they're penalized for having an original thought. And so because of that, just look at the whole 2020 thing. Anybody who thought differently and didn't obey with the orders was demonized by society at large. So any sense of rebellion from the system, from the authorities, from the experts is viewed as treason to our modern world. So you can't really blame them for that. They've been penalized for it. And when you've been beaten for going against the grain, it takes a certain type of person to keep doing that. A lot of people can get broken. I think of 1984, Winston, I think, whatever. I don't know. I haven't read that book in years, but at the end, they break him. They break him completely to go with 2 + 2 = 5 or some shit. Yeah, and I think that's where we're at. I don't think that's a problem with the technology necessarily. I believe it's a problem with the culture in our belief systems.
About what they want to talk about or what they want to portray to the rest of the world. I think that's a really sad thing. It's almost like I could just imagine them sitting there at a computer.
Here I am. I'm just kidding.
Having an AI recommend video content to them.
Dude, you're on YouTube, brother. The AI algorithm is recommending you videos every day. The AI algorithm recommended me your video to watch, which is going to help you.
And then do all the work and then just pump it out there. Does not appeal to me. I prefer, granted, that's subjective. Some people might like that. I do like some aspects of AI where you might have some really fun, unique, very quickly made artist renditioning, not artists, but AI rendered videos and pictures that might help somebody express their idea if they have an original idea. Okay. That still being said, I would still prefer a well-made drawing or painting. I would never have AI do a portrait of me if I could afford or have an authentic, skilled artist portray me or my family or a scene. There's not ever going to be an AI.
But what about the orator who basically became minimized through video? What about the painter, the realistic painter who became minimized because of the camera, right? So I think creativity is going to flourish during these times. I mean, I don't know if this guy's done it, but I paid absurd amount of money to learn how to make really, really good images and prompt really, really well. It takes a different kind of skill set. Like you need to know these different, like let's say, for instance, you want to make a really good video with AI and it's all AI generated. You have to know what camera angles there are, what different lenses there are, what different aspect ratios there are, what different lighting there can be, what different kind of background, what different kind of like footage, like rendering it can do. I don't know the exact word for that, but like 4K, 1080p frames per second. You need to know these kind of things, the different kind of animations. All of that is a knowledge base you have to draw from. And granted, you can draw from AI, which you wouldn't know what to ask if you didn't know these things, though, right? So you need to have some sort of understanding of these past things. In addition to that, the creativity to make a compelling video that is AI generated. And the technology is going to get better. We just looked 2 years ago, a year ago, the videos were garbage compared to what you can do today. Even the image generation was. I mean, I'll tell you, I paid $3,000, call me an idiot, I don't care, to really, really learn this stuff with the videos and the images. Well, it's night and day now. It's night and day now. But I do understand what he's saying, and there's always going to be a market for that human touch. Human connection is the most valuable thing that we have on this planet is human connection because it allows for the potential of love. And love is the highest order of things. So AI will never be able to replace that, which will then maybe mean it can't produce as good of art, or there'll be an element of soullessness to it. Not saying that can't be true, but it could also still be the case that it makes something beautiful, and there's just something subtly different about it. But it can still be beautiful, and you need to be creative to make beautiful pieces of art with AI. But I get where he's coming from. I do like listening to humans over AI, especially right now, but I use AI every day. I use it for a lot of my stuff. I use it a lot for the text that I write on LinkedIn, Facebook, because it does take a lot of work to produce these videos. And so if I had to sit there and write every word, and that would take a long time. And there's a lot of things I do on video here. So, and plus I got a lot of other things aside from making content that I have to do, and writing is a lot. I enjoy writing. I like writing, but I like doing this more. So yeah. And I know that he says that he uses AI and he likes some things of AI, and I understand where he's coming from, but that's my take.
AI. I'm sorry to be laughing here. My wife is literally flashing me topless from our bathroom window. What the fuck? It's like, I guess it's a good thing when you're married almost 20 years and your wife's trying to seduce you through a bathroom window.
Yeah, that's a good thing. Bully on you, brother.
So anyway, I think
Is he standing on top of one of those pole ladders? Sorry, this thing has just been like right there. He's just standing on top of one of his pole ladders, making the video.
Where was I at? See what this does to us? See what you ladies do to us? You can shut our brains off. Just like I haven't had my morning coffee. I'm out here with this pristine. I hear chickens and birds and crows and look.
It is beautiful where he's at.
You know, a brief flash of
like
boobies and my brain just shuts off. You know,
man, he has a good landscape for a video. That's for sure.
Fuck. Now, see, that's the thing though. Some of these people just don't embrace reality. They don't touch grass. They don't have human connection, which is also important. I'm not saying it's their fault necessarily. This is a society that we've forged over the years through our dependence on technology. And don't get me wrong, I'm not complaining about the technology. I think it's wonderful and it's incredible and it's going to lead to new things. I'm not one of these old people that's like, fucking VCR, I don't know how to use it. No, that shit. We have advancements to be made for a good reason. It's really necessary. That being said, human creativity is unique, cannot truly be replicated by AI. It can only be parroted by AI at best.
Nice. So we're in agreement.
And I know that that's a new frontier. I personally would prefer to still have a simple, I would like to have an artist do renderings for me. There's never going to be an AI that matches Thomas Kinkade. No matter how much it imitates it or how well imitated it is, it's never going to be Thomas Kinkade.
Let's see. What is his name?
Consider how well imitated it is. Thomas Kinkade. Do renderings for me. There's never going to be an AI that matches Thomas Kinkade.
Thomas Kinkade. Let's see. All right. Thomas Kinkade. All right. Let's see. Never going to be an artist like Thomas Kinkade. Let's see. Let's take this image. I can't just save it. Go back. Save image. TK. I had a buddy in high school named TK. Let's try Gemini. I've been on a big Gemini kick these days. Here we go. Let's I can't add an image. Oh, because it's on this thing. Let's do that. There we go. Boom. TK. All right. Replicate Thomas Kinkade. Are you kidding me? No, just make a variation. From this man standing on a, I don't know, just standing. Now that doesn't work. We'll go to the good old trusty ChatGPT. Although ChatGPT's, oh, look at that. No, okay, all right, he wins. Just kidding. Let's see. Let's go over to ChatGPT. See what it says. Let's just ask. Hit the same thing. We'll see what it does. All right, just do it. Just do it. All right. No, I wanted you to. Oh my gosh. All right. See? It's my fault, not the AI's fault. The AI is never wrong. It's always your fault. Duplicates image and likeness. Dude. Just do it. Just do it. This isn't working the way that I wanted it to. And it's frustrating. Let's see what it does. This is Thomas Kincaid. Gen X Heathen said he can't be replicated. Let's see what some of his artwork looks like. All this images. There we go. Let's see. Thomas Kincaid. And that looks cool. Yeah, I mean, it is beautiful. Let's see. Huh. That's nice. Huh. All right, let's see. Oh, come on, still going. Let's see what other art we have here. Oh, Star Wars. You know, I've never watched any of the Star Wars. What? Word? Is he selling anything? Is he? Wow, so you got an art consultant. That's cool. That's cool, man. That's crazy, though. 5,400. It must be a really big picture. Yeah. Because there's a cheaper version, and somebody's bought that. What do you think, chat? What do you think? Oh, look at this. Mr. Thomas Kincaid can't be replicated by AI. See that? They look very similar to me, don't they? Yeah. How about that, buddy? All right, we'll get back to the video.
No matter how much it imitates it or how well imitated it is, it's never going to be Thomas Kincaid. You know, or some of you familiar with like TSR fantasy genre? I remember like Larry Elmore for all these novels and things like this. There's so many great ones. Of course, I could give a shit less about the weirdos like Picasso and all them. And I know some of you are like thinking I'm a Philistine for that, but there were some 20th century trends and a little bit earlier that were all just nihilistic nonsense, which kind of led us to this.
Hey, dude, I like it. You sound pretty based.
Degenerate phase of our society, in my opinion. But I digress. That's not what I'm really talking about here. I'm looking at originality. Originality, I think, is crucial. How it's always been challenging to find our mark in the world. And I guess as someone who's Gen X, it was always important for us to show our individuality, our uniqueness, our originality. If I had to sum us up, we want to be original. Each of us wants to express ourselves in an original way, in an original fashion, with our original ideas. And it's always been tough. It's always been tough. The societal pressures to allow that to happen have always been very difficult. And now it would appear that they're going to be even that much more challenging, with technology saying you don't even have to be a human being anymore. Let me take over those beautiful and necessary aspects of your humanity. You know, what really defines us and separates us as human beings. The machine will just do it for you. And the machine is just zeros and ones. It's really just algorithms. So we could reduce this, I would say, almost a spiritually unique aspect to humanity, and reduce it to an algorithm. Not a good thing. Not a good thing at all. Sun's trying to rise. There's a little bit of mist in this field here. Can't replicate that. The smell, this cool air I feel on my skin.
I agree.
These unique sounds, all these living things around me, surrounded by life and the energy of life. You can't fake that. I mean, you can make it look like that, but that's an illusion. You might create the illusion, but it's still not the real thing. So I would recommend to all those of you out there who embrace the technology, nothing wrong with it, it's extremely useful, use it wisely, but touch grass. Touch grass. Embrace your humanity, or embrace that wild side of you as well. So anyway, just my quick thoughts this morning. Beautiful day outside. I love it. And I hope to see you guys.
Peace out, brother. All right. Let's see what other content he has. That's so funny. I think I might. Yeah, okay. This dude. Oh, that's great.
Hello, YouTube. Just a quick note to say that if you are an authentic Germanic heathen, following the old ways, you probably will not cut down a Christmas tree. And I say that because, the idea of sawing down a tree for a very short-term use, a very wasteful use if you really think about it, it epitomizes everything wrong with how our traditions got hijacked by Christianity, how they got appropriated, twisted, and turned into this horrible, consumerist, materialistic nightmare that we have now.
Now, it's very untrue. It's a very Nietzschean perspective. But actually, let's just do it. Let's do it. A lot of people seem to believe that. And AI, I'm hoping, is going to save me some time from doing a bunch of digging for this. So let's see. It is actually, acts like a religious history professor. It is 1% in the field. The goal is to see if it is true that Christianity stole traditions from pagans / heathens of antiquity. It is my understanding that they did not, but rather were some original in their traditions. However, this could be incorrect. So, correct. And if I am wrong, let's see. Okay. Interesting. Okay.
It's very reflective of the values that we've lost in our Western cultures. When you have a tree being hacked down, a living thing being hacked down and destroyed, things that were considered sacred to our ancestors are
Brother, but hang on. Pagans routinely slaughtered their children.
used now for just a good time, a good feeling, I guess, for a holiday, which is no longer recognized in the right way. I mean, I don't celebrate Christmas. I celebrate Yule. I celebrate the real thing. And I find it kind of funny that people will go out of their way to associate their small deforestation with connection to family and friends and gift giving and all those things, all the great pagan things that were originally there before it got appropriated by Christianity. And it's a strange thing. I just find it bizarre. Like, I found this tree, this evergreen across this pasture, and here I am kind of in the American South on a warm day in December, which just feels so unnatural to me. And I tried to keep this tree alive, right? Some cows chewed on it, right? You know, there's a bunch of cows in the pasture behind me now. You know, so I try to nourish it, give it some, if I can, get plant food, or even found a skull of one of the dead cows and put it at the base of this tree that's been chewed on, hoping that it'll stimulate life and survive the onslaught of the
I mean, he is based, though. I like it.
cattle. And anyway, side note, I'm just saying that you shouldn't be cutting down trees. If you want to, try to nourish a tree, nourish life, bring in a tree. Now, I remember growing up in the Rocky Mountains, and we'd go get trees, go hike in the mountains, middle of nowhere, get a 4-wheel drive, wade through waist deep of snow, and cut down a Christmas tree. And I love the feeling, the smell of it in my house, lay underneath it, smell the pine. And it was a beautiful experience and a good thing. But now I see that we have to be kind of the guardians of these things. We have to be the protectors of nature. We have to
Christianity says that we should be stewards.
establish our connection to nature, to these living things as well. I mean, people might just think, "Oh, you're a tree hugger. That's just it's just a tree." Well, yeah, I guess you could say that. It's also a living thing. It's also part of the interdependent cycle of life that we're all part of here on this planet. So, in a nutshell, I would say don't buy Christmas trees and all the fake, gaudy, plastic nonsense of these holidays. And people say, oh, it strays from its Christian purpose. Well, screw its Christian purpose anyway. It strays from all decent purposes. Christianity, it was doomed to be a grotesque. It's part of an old greedy cult anyway. So what do you expect? You expect it to embrace its Germanic traditions and holidays and become a clean, good, healthy, true religion that understands the cycles of nature? No, it just pumped a bunch of its greedy desert cult-like behavior into the holidays. Anyway, enough of my rant. I would say if you are a true Germanic heathen, you will not cut down a tree. But if you find it in your heart to maybe have offerings to that tree or to the spirit associated with that forest, I think you should do so. We should go back to our old.
You want to hear a story about a dude who paid $80 million for 2 pizzas? Go all in on video. 90% of all minutes on the internet are video. That's why social media is so powerful. When you succeed, you party. When you fail, you ponder. I was failing, and it gave me hope. And all greatness comes out of pondering. One thing you'll notice, great hooks are at the bottom of Maslow's hierarchy of needs. So let me show you. So you have, anybody seen the Maslow? There's a couple versions of it, but you have the needs of humans, right? I'll just make a simpler version. Here you have essentially physiological, food, shelter, water, sex, primitive stuff. Here you have like safety, like you make money. Then you have love. And then here you have higher purpose, right? If I hold your head underwater in the pool, you ain't going, Ty, I wonder if I'm living the best version of myself, right? So if you don't have air, food, sex, shelter, water, you don't care about if you have savings account. If you don't have these two, you don't. Who here has ever been like, I'm too broke to be dating anybody? I've had that feeling. Okay. That's because Maslow, the psychologist, predicted this. He's like, yeah, of course not. You have to have food, shelter, water. Safety in the modern world is a little bit of savings in the bank. Then you start thinking about love, and then love, higher purpose. A lot of you are building your personal brand backwards. You're doing higher purpose first. This is the smallest quadrant. So hooks that are down here are way better. That's why I said this hook.
Let's try it. We're gonna try it. Okay. Here we go. This is gonna be my hook. It just came to me. I'm serious. I'm gonna roll with it. Maybe I come up with a better one, but I'll try them differently. All right. If you don't learn how to prompt, your wife's gonna leave you. Come on, why is this so fucking quiet? Prompt, your wife's gonna leave you. If you don't learn how to prompt, your wife's gonna leave you. If you don't learn how to prompt, your wife's gonna leave you. Look, I hate to be the one to tell you this. If you don't learn about AI, this might be a better one. If you don't learn about AI, you're probably going to lose your house and your wife. If you don't learn about AI, you're probably going to lose your house and your wife. Let's see. You're probably, if you don't learn about AI, if you don't learn about AI, you are going to end up broke, homeless, and divorced. If you don't learn about AI, you're going to end up broke, homeless, and divorced. If you don't learn about AI, you're going to end up broke, homeless, and divorced. I don't make the rules. But I can help you play to these new set of rules. But I can help you play the game. And I don't make the rules, but I can help you play the game. That's probably decent. Let's see.
I have come to the party, which every one of you saw, and 100,000 people clicked on in the last couple months. Party is kind of at the bottom. It's like, we're going to have food. There are going to be people around. It's very primitive. This is tribal. So tribal stuff that was happening 10,000 generations ago is the tribal. So try to make your hooks very tribal. Here in my garage was kind of, what is a Lamborghini and Ferrari? What's the emblem on a Ferrari?
A horse.
A horse. Okay. What was used for transportation for the last 10,000
Oh my gosh, a horse. Actually, that's a pretty interesting thought.
generations before cars?
And then Lamborghini is a bull.
So when I do an ad and I'm like, yo, here in my garage, got this Lamborghini, this Ferrari, I'm saying, dudes, check out my Chariot. It's a Chariot.
Dude, he's not really underrated, but he is underrated in a lot of ways. A lot of people think he's a scammer. He's pretty fucking smart.
So it's very bottom of the Maslow hierarchy of needs. Number one thing, the reason that those of you doing personal brand or paid ads are not winning is because you start up here.
Dude, I'm going to start doing exactly what he said. This is like dope advice, and it's free, and I'm 3 minutes in.
You know,
We'll see how it works.
oh, this product will transform your life. People don't care about transformation if they don't have these lower rungs of psychology met. That's why if you look at it's always surprising to me that the top 20 people richest in the world, there's always food companies and clothing companies. Bernard Arnault has been like number 1 or number 2 for the last, 5 years? He was richest man in the world more than Elon. Dada. He sells clothes, food, shelter, water. Warren Buffett been the richest Forbes list guy for the longest.
Calculate.
Look at a lot of the companies he owns. Dairy Queen, Fruit of the Loom underwear, a bricks company that does, it's like called like Acme Bricks or whatever. He owns all this bottom of the Maslow hierarchy of needs. And part of the reason is it's easy to market it.
All right, let me finish this video. I think I took a dope picture of this. Let me see how this video flows so far. I don't make the rules, but I can help you play the game. Huh. This is a state-of-the-art prompting guide that YC Combinator. That's not a good flow. We'll start here with this state-of-the-art prompting guide that YC Combinator created. And if you're not sure, and if you don't know who fuck, I fucked up, didn't I? I called it YC Combinator in the other video too. We'll start here with this state-of-the-art prompting guide Y Combinator is giving away for free. If you don't know who Y Combinator is, they are the birthplace for company Fudge. If you don't know who Y Combinator is, they are the birthplace of over $90 billion companies like OpenAI, Uber, DoorDash, Instacart. So here it is again. Please save the video so you don't go broke, homeless, or divorced. And be sure to hit that follow button. That way I can help you remain rich. I don't like that. That was cheesy. And be sure to hit that follow button so I can help you stay ahead of the curve so none of those things happen. I can help you. All right. Now let's go on to make this video good. Make videos great again. All right, let's keep listening.
That's why social media is so powerful. Our tribal ancestors were looking face to face at people. That's what I predicted 12 years ago. I told everybody, go all in on video. Remember, 2013, nothing really was video. YouTube did exist, but video was like 20% of internet minutes. All internet was 20% or 30%. And I had a friend, having friends in the right places, he told me, Ty, you watch. Everything's going to be video consumption because it mimics our ancestral past. In our ancestral past, how would we talk to people? We'd sit around a fire. We'd talk about stories, hunting, men, women. So fast forward to today, like 90% of all minutes on the internet are video. I knew TikTok would beat Instagram. I'm like, this is a fucking no-brainer. If you build a platform around pictures or a platform around videos, like that's bankruptcy for now. Zuckerberg's smart. He quickly added Reels. So video, mastery of video, going back to it really lived down here. Occasionally get up here. Very occasionally get up here. Higher purpose videos are tough. All right,
I'm going to edit this video up. If you don't learn how to prompt, your wife's going to leave you. I don't want that one. If you don't learn about AI, you're going to end up broke, homeless, and divorced. I don't make the rules, but I can help you play the game. We'll start here with this stick. State-of-the-art prompting guide Y Combinator is giving away for free. If you don't know who Y Combinator is, they are the birthplace of over $90 billion companies like OpenAI, Uber, DoorDash, Instacart. So here it is again. Please. Again, please save the video so you don't go broke, homeless,
homeless or divorced. And be sure to hit that follow button so I can help you stay ahead of the curve. So now
I always am blown away that Tony Robbins doesn't go more viral. Like, I love Tony Robbins. I'm a big Tony Robbins fan. You know, he helped. One of the first books I when I was poor that helped me was Awaken the Giant Within. I remember one sentence. He said, when you
All good?
succeed, you party. When you fail, you ponder, and all greatness comes out of pondering. Well, guess what? I was failing, and it gave me hope. Well, yeah, shit, now I'm going to think through my life and make more money. So I love Tony Robbins, but he doesn't go viral. You know why? Because Tony, and this, I'm not saying Tony Robbins should change anything. I'm just saying he just really talks about higher purpose shit. Now, Andrew Tate got 27 billion views in 18 months. That's a record for humans, okay? I've gotten billions, but 27 billion in 18 months is like wacky.
But he didn't say just
Yeah, but where is he? Where is he?
Tate is odd. Tony Robbins is West.
Yeah, but Tony Robbins, maybe it's hard. Tony Robbins is up here talking about finding your higher purpose, where Andrew Tate's like talking about to men about women, money, chariots. What color's your Bugatti? That's what color's your chariot. That's ancient. Native Americans competed. The richest dude had the most horses. So if you want to have a lot of views, which you will need
That's interesting. I didn't know that. Wow.
on your product, get real low on the hierarchy of needs. Real low. I mean, Nike's one of the great stories. Shoes, food, shelter, water. These aren't Nike's, but shoes are important. Build $1 billion empire. Starbucks. If you could be any of the billionaires out there, I mean, there's so many in the food space. It's the Mars family, candy, Red Bull, Mataschitz, a drink, energy. That's the bottom of Maslow hierarchy of needs. 4-hour energy. Is it 3-hour energy or 4-hour energy? 5-hour, sorry. There's a couple competitors. Remember that one, something about Mary? I'm going to launch, oh, you got 5-hour energy? I'm going to fucking launch 6-hour energy. Why would you buy 5-hour when you could buy 6-hour? So a lot of you, when I look at your personal brand, you're so high up here that I'm like, you're just not going to go viral. My most viral video in the last year, I'm on Brad Lee's podcast. What's the healthiest drink on earth?
Man, what's going on? My daughter's downstairs crying.
Tequila.
What up? We got one.
That
pertinent
video,
here.
it always, I sometimes
This
laugh
isn't
when I
necessarily
look at it.
AI
It's not a
right now,
viral
but
video
this is
ever,
pertinent.
but across
to
all
what
the
I do.
platforms, I think it got 50 to 100 million people easy saw that video, right? It's a lot. 100 million people is, more than most countries. But that's not what blows my mind. Look at this. What's that stat right there? This is a 9 million view tequila video. That's the shares. How many shares does it?
307K.
307,000 people shared it. I remember right out the gate, it had 100,000 forwards to friends. And then I thought, of course, Ty, think deeper. Human behavior, psychology, beverages.
I'll be back.
Why would you forward it? Every dude who fucking has any story about tequila, which is all guys that have ever been drinking, they got some story about tequila, good or bad. They're forwarding it from, motherfucker, I told you, tequila.
Spitting.
So all the tequila defenders, it's such a basic concept that 50 million people watch it. I could do a video on how to build a marketing funnel. That's up here. It's not going to get 50 million views. Some of my best content, sometimes I look at YouTube, I'm like, oh my God, this video, I just gave away like exactly how to do converting ads. Like, let me share with you $500 million of split tests. I do a video, it gets like 5,000 views. Then I just did one, which was, what's the best city in the world to live in? 10 times the views. Where is where to live? Bottom of Maslow. Where is how to get your ads converting? The top. Be the highest version of your business, the most profitable version. That's why all the big personal brands in the business space talk about a lot of other stuff besides business. Because business is what you talk about when we have this room, when it's just you all. But if I'm trying to, 5% of the world have watched my videos. Easy. At least 400 or 500 million people, if not more. And
We'll start with the state-of-the-art prompting guide, Y Combinator is giving away for free. If you don't know who Y Combinator is, they are the birthplace of over $90 billion companies like OpenAI, Uber, DoorDash, Instacart. So here it is again. Please save the video so you don't, if you don't know about AI, go ahead and broke, hopeless, enforced. I don't make the rules, but
ChatGPT is trying to clone you, and that's its end goal, and that's how it's going to get you to pay $1,000 a month. So right now,
and those top of the funnel videos that got hundreds of millions of people to watch them, here. I did a crypto one. I'll tell you one of my best. I've done like 5 of the biggest viral video ad campaigns in history. Okay, not to brag, but the reason I want to say that is because
the rules. But
one of my better ones is the least well known because YouTube took it down because of crypto. In 2017, YouTube, all these fucking woke companies shut down all crypto. I had this ad and I've never seen a spike of views. It made Here in My Garage look like my shittiest video. Okay, and what it was, I had 2 pizzas and I just had this idea. I had ordered pizza and behind me is like, I lived right there, that house over there, and I had like 6 Lamborghinis, Ferraris, and I had this pizza. I told my cameraman, I was like, I think maybe it was Adrian. I'm like, yo, film this real quick. I got an idea. I just go, you want to hear a story about a dude who paid $80 million for 2 pizzas? Let me tell you the 2 pizza story. About 5 years ago, a guy ordered 2 pizzas from Domino's. When it was delivered, he had all this worthless thing he called Bitcoin, and he just said to the dude, can I just pay you in Bitcoin? So he paid the guy in 100 Bitcoin or something, which is now worth, actually the math now is, it's $250 million. When I did the commercial, the price was hard. That ad fucking crushed. It spoke people. I got more people to buy Bitcoin than anybody on earth, I think. For sure. That video got shot to 50 million people saw it in 1 month in January 2017. I meet people to this day like, I got into crypto because of you. I got a lot of heat from the crypto community because they hate ads. But I'm like, y'all are fucking stupid. I'm like, I drove up the price of Bitcoin, motherfucker. What makes Bitcoin go up? More people buying than are selling. But that video was so low on the Maslow's hierarchy of needs. I see people doing crypto videos. You know what's great about Bitcoin? 21 million limited supply. That's not catchy. What the fuck?
Yeah,
Do you think any of your
that's a
primitive,
big-
your
That's like two different forms of communication: the dialectic and the rhetoric. A lot of the crypto bros are very dialectic, which is logic, and the simplest way to get it. Rhetorical is more emotional, influential, motivational, persuasive language. Most people operate on the rhetorical side as opposed to the dialectical side, which is what he's talking about here. So, yeah, it's interesting.
ancestors couldn't count past 10. There was nothing to count. Native Americans used to go 1, 2, 3, many. So humans aren't built for numbers to talk about in terms of talking about 21 million limited supply. No, be like, you know what, everybody at the tribal level, safety. What if I missed out on something that would have made me rich? So that crypto pizza commercial hit these two. I didn't talk about love. I didn't talk about higher purpose. I'm going to go in with this Bitcoin. You could donate to charities and save the world. That would have made that video go down. I just spoke to food and money. And just remember, at any given time, 30% of a room is always hungry. Physically hungry. Like right now, after lunch, I should have done an experiment. Everybody come in here. We just ate lunch. 5 minutes. Who here could eat a little more? 30% of hands will go up. Food is the dominant thought for the average person. Food.
Yeah. Yeah, that was good. That was good. We'll see if his advice worked. But if it did it, it's on me, not him. That means I did something wrong. Let's check this out.
The initial starting point of the conversation is RL, and an interesting question is, what is different about doing RL for coding than for other sort of easier, more verifiable domains? So either for math or for even like sort of even bigger domains like sort of writing or anything else. What's different about coding models?
Well, one thing is sort of like the action space for coding is much larger. So if we think about math, reasoning works really well for math because the answer is quite short at the end. And so reasoning helps give it a lot of action to arrive to the answer. Well, coding sort of like the reasoning is already in the answer, right?
Yeah, also to get to the answer, you have to call like multiple tools. And so instead of just like generate reasoning tokens, generate an answer, get a reward, it kind of looks like you generate some tokens, call some tools, get a response from those tools, and maybe you do this iteratively several times. So the RL, the shape of the RL looks a little bit different because now you have to like go through this multi-step tool calling process and optimize over that.
And for us, RL is particularly interesting because we don't always have a way after receiving the completion from the model, determining whether it actually solved the user's problem or did what the user wanted. You know, if you have a math problem with a golden answer or a coding problem, then you can test whether it gets the right answer. But we want to do RL in situations where the user doesn't always tell us whether it worked or not.
What do you think is going to happen for domains like writing? Do you think we just won't use RL there at all and just hope that the base models like get good enough via pre-training? Do you think like there is a path for RL improving things there?
The post-training that's currently done on the models tends to make them write in like a very stilted and formal way. But I don't think that's like an inherent limitation of the models. I think that's just what they're trained to do.
Yeah, why can't you like train the models to predict the next chapter? Like certainly instead of making it predict the next token, you want to change the learning dynamics so that it starts to predict the whole sequence. Given the current chapter of the book, the model should try to predict the whole next chapter of the book, sort of how the story follows. And then you have some sort of similarity metric on how that next chapter is similar to the ground truth chapter.
It's like taking hard next token prediction problems in writing and then allowing it to kind of do reasoning and then using the reward, some like reward of similarity.
Some like semantic reward, ideally. Yeah.
Because I think one of the limitations of these models is that the next token prediction objective doesn't really fully capture what we actually want, which is generating a full sequence.
Well, there's two things there, right? There's like letting it spend more compute before predicting like the next token effectively. And then there's like, it doesn't actually need to predict the exact next token versus predicting like this full sequence that is like similar to the next chapter.
The thing that's hard about writing is that whether the output is good or not is really a matter of taste more than with coding. And with coding, you really just want it to work. Whereas with writing, even experienced people might disagree about whether it's good or bad.
But don't you think there are like facets of that in coding? Like once you get to like it passed the test, like it's going to be maybe pretty hard to get past that, right?
Yeah, that's true. I think code quality is a difficult problem.
Yeah, but pass the test sometimes doesn't work because pass the test doesn't also capture the case of what the model actually did to make it pass the test. So even ignoring sort of like the hacks where it starts doing sort of edge cases.
Yeah.
To make the test pass, like the model could start doing things that are completely unrelated to the task and still pass the test, and that would give them a good reward, right?
Well, I mean, that's just a function of how good your tests are, right?
With code quality, or like what you want is kind of like elegant code that's like not longer than it needs to be. Just like maybe like you want like the shortest solution or like the smallest description length. Similar with math, like maybe the most beautiful proof is like the shortest one. I mean, it's not exactly the same thing, but here's an element of that.
What about with edits? Would you then like bias towards things that deleted code?
If you just want the shortest solution.
Yeah.
I mean, I think it's great to delete code. Yeah. If you can do a minus 100 line PR that like keeps all the functionality, like I'm very happy.
Yeah, no, that's fair.
What are good rewards in general? So I think the topic came to like these rewards. I think we're experimenting with many different kinds of rewards for training the RL models. What are some of your favorite ideas?
Like what are the pros of tests then? Like
it's like very close to ground truth. So like he said, there's some issues with tests where like maybe if there's not enough coverage, you can kind of skirt around them without solving the real thing. But if there's good tests, then it's something close to a ground truth signal of like, does this code work or not? And you can like really do RL against that for a long time and learn some potentially interesting behaviors from the model. But not everything can be captured by tests. So like we might need to sort of relax sort of the conditions and maybe think about other ways to get rewards. So this could like one idea is potentially like using, a ground truth diff of like a change for a feature. And, maybe there's multiple ways to make that same change. So it's not a perfect, signal, but like you could potentially use this as information for helping, make a verification signal.
What about like the sparsity of reward and tests? Like maybe one downside is you have to sample a lot of rollouts and you only get like one of them passing. You only get this kind of 1 or 0 of like, did it pass all the tests or not?
Yeah, I mean, it makes the training like computationally expensive, I guess. But like there is this like interesting thing, like if you have enough compute to do a bunch of rollouts, you can kind of get sparser signal by doing rollouts from each token in sort of a branching way, but it becomes expensive. So basically like the sparsity just converts to like a expensive compute problem.
Because the models actually don't see the reward, they see the advantages, which is sort of like a reward relative to the reward other rollouts from the same prompt.
Well, the interesting thing is, like one thing that would be quite useful is, normally if you have tests on a full PR, like that's going to be super difficult and super sparse unless you spend a ton of compute, right? Because very few times in like a full PR is maybe like where the models are today, are they going to be able to pass all the tests? But maybe like what you want is you want to be able to break it down into smaller parts of like the full PR and then get tests in that. And that probably would just be like, would that, if you had the ability to do that, would that be like a strict improvement?
Yeah, I think that probably would be. So I guess like, yeah, there's this problem of like, if the task is like so hard, the model will only get it right like 1 in 1,000 times if you just sample, then that sparse reward becomes like a real issue. If it's, 1 in 100 or like higher than that, then like you can probably work with that. But yeah, so then once you have it at that sort of like 1 in 1,000, maybe you need to think about like breaking things down more. Or
do you think we're in that regime, full commits, where it's like it might be a bit too sparse?
Yeah, I think in some cases you may need to reduce the amount of sparsity by breaking it up into component parts and wanting it to get each part right. I mean, on some level, I think what you want is like a change that's equivalent in functionality to the ground truth or the good change, and that's short. The problem is that not only is that a difficult objective, but even like evaluating whether a candidate solution like satisfies it is equivalent to the halting problem. So it's like, it's very hard. You can't actually do that.
Yeah.
But if you can do something that gets at it, maybe that's a good direction.
What are the most interesting tools? So like generally, you know, we've seen this trend of like different sort of labs choosing different sets of tools to RL the model for. So O3 sort of very, very optimized for terminals. And, you know, it tends to like, it's this kind of very weird model where it only tends to sort of grep and sed and doesn't use, you know, it doesn't want to use any tool other than the terminal. And then sort of Claude models that tend to maybe designed around sort of searching and editing. Is there some interesting ideas around tools that, you know, one would use that aren't just the sort of traditional tools?
I mean, I think you can do a lot better than the kind of core set of tools. I think the reason why the terminal makes sense is it's so easy, right? Like you don't need to build some super fancy harness in order to run your agent. You literally just give it access to a shell, and that can just do everything in there. Simplicity is probably the biggest reason, right? So one example is like linter errors. Linter errors give you a ton of signal, but they're just hard.
I don't really know what they're talking about, but it's good to listen to things that confuse you sometimes.
To get, because you need to run a language server in order to get that. And then actually getting a language server running for arbitrary code is actually kind of hard. But, you know, it's an interesting thing that we have as Signal in Cursor because, you know, Cursor comes with extensions that have language servers pre-installed, and users will go and set that up. So you get things like linters. We also have something like semantic search. And I don't know, like, I actually don't think semantic search can get you things like over just static code files. Will get you things that like grep with sufficiently many hops could get you, but it'll get you there faster. And so that means it's cheaper, using less of the context window, and faster.
Right. So maybe this gets to the point of you also want to improve the quality of the tools. I don't know. How do you guys think about picking high quality tools versus trading
Like
off the
minimal.
simplicity of like you can sort of pick the most minimal description, which is I guess just the terminal, and then you could ask questions like maybe you want higher and higher quality tools for the model.
Well, one thing is sort of you can also use tools to model the behavior of the model itself. Like for example, we know a lot of the reasoning models like to reason a lot and overthink, even in situations they don't really need to start reasoning for. So one way you can sort of mitigate that is if you add a ticking tool where, you know, the model realizes the task requires some reasoning, and so then it starts calling the tool to enable this reasoning.
Yeah, I've always found like the way the reasoning models interact with agentic tool calling. Maybe O3 is a bit different, and I'm less. I haven't played as much with that, but it was always kind of weird where it would think after you submitted the user message before it like had even seen anything, and then go and call these tools.
And so what you mean is you think the model should think after each of the tools, right?
Not after each of them. I mean, I think like, what was the reason that people train these reasoning models, right? And how did they normally train it? It was when, I think like the first version of O1 was probably just trained on competition, like competitive programming, and then math problems. And like the idea there is you want to, at the end, like come up with some nice answer. Either you can show that to the user, or you can like show this to like whatever's and grabbing that and like verifying it. And then before that, you want to like spend a bunch of tokens thinking. I wonder with agent trajectories, if like what is the thing that you're actually showing to the user, like want to be verified in the end, right? It is either you're like, there's some text maybe that like the user gets to see, but a lot of the time, like when you're not asking it a question, you're just asking it to make the change. It's like literally just the edit tools, right? When it's like editing a file. So I wonder if you even need this concept of there is separate reasoning when you're just asking a model to like edit code. And just like, it just does whatever in those tool calls when you train it. You let it do whatever instead of restricting like some like nice reasoning section.
Another like really interesting tool that we're thinking about is looking at PRs and what the people in the code base have been doing. I mean, like one like mental model you can have for these models is that they're capable engineers who are like perpetually on like their third day in the job, right? And they get like 2 days of like context to like try and like get up to speed in the code base as quickly as possible. And then, you know, day 3, they're asked to do something. And, you know, if you were in that situation, I think, you know, one reasonable approach would be you spend those 2 days trying to understand what your colleagues have been doing and like why they're making the changes that they're doing and what code are they touching. And currently, the models aren't really oriented around looking at PRs and looking at what the people have been doing. They're more designed to consume the code in large chunks and search for relevant code, which is a great match for how these models were pre-trained. And obviously, it's still an important part of the solution, but something that also looks at the PRs is interesting to us.
How do you think code and long context interact? So at least in some weird way, like, you can sort of say long context is very important, because if you look at restrict everything to 8K tokens, like Sonnet and O1 and GPT-4, like the original thing, are kind of equivalent. And so you need something more than a critical context length of like, maybe you need 50, 60K tokens minimum. Do you think you just keep letting the context length go and that improves the RL? Like, how do you think the two interact with each other?
I mean, the trend has been for the context to get longer and longer, and attention is pretty great at using a long context, but the price also gets higher and higher. And so on the technical side, I think a really interesting direction in long context is, how can we keep the costs low? How can we reuse cached context across many prompts? And that gets, particularly relevant with the most recent models that are like more capable than before, but also, the total bill can get quite high if you're not intelligent about how you cache and use the context. And, when you start looking at professional code bases, there's like a really large amount of relevant context to whatever you might want to be doing. And it's something that I think is maybe special to code in some sense, in that, if you are ChatGPT, right? If you are the Claude app, there's not that much context that the user is bringing in most cases. They have a question, it's often 100 tokens. And so your main concern is how to compress the totality of human knowledge into weights and then use that to give a good answer to the question. You're less concerned about how do I take 1 million tokens and get useful information from that can be efficiently used by a model, because it's not what most of your users care about.
How long a context window do you think we need? 1 million, 10 million, 100 million?
I think longer is better, but there are also diminishing returns. The approach of retrieving relevant tokens to the query on the fly is not the only approach we need, but it is also pretty good. And so something that uses a mixture of mechanisms of having some kind of mechanism that, for example, can consume 100 million tokens, but maybe gets less information from each of those tokens, right? And uses that to get a general understanding of the code base. But then when you know exactly what you want to do, it can remember which parts are relevant and refresh its memory on those parts, is probably what will make the most sense long term.
What do you guys think about all the new architectures coming out where sort of, there have been some trends where it sort of reduce the, there's normal sliding window attention, and more and more you have found these, Llama 4 has an even more kind of complicated attention mechanism. And
yeah, I mean, NSA is pretty elegant, right?
What's your take on NSA?
I mean, actually, elegant may not be the correct way to
so
describe it.
NSA here is DeepSeek's attention mechanism that they publish.
And fingers crossed that they're going to release this in their next model. But it's their attention mechanism that scales quite well. They found it performs better than attention, and the core way that it works is kind of splits up attention to these 3 pieces. One does sliding window attention, so kind of pays attention to what happened in the short term, the last, I don't know, maybe 4,000 tokens. And the other 2 parts are interesting because it basically does this blockwise attention where it will, every some number of tokens, store that as a key and value, and then the query will attend to those, and then from that, you get the top K, and then you take the blocks, and then you do full attention on them. I think it's pretty cool because, yeah, it kind of
taking the which is, we have this label for the model intent, which is at some values you just on it, and these are trained. And the idea is that learning a gradient for everything, the fact that it encourages the weights to be more relevant. In the case of MOE experts, to a particular example, means that the
Something happened. Excuse me.
is, to really get a good sense of the baselines, because, everything kind of works to some extent, like you can do sparse attention, you can have some heads that attend locally and some that attend globally. And these all make performance a little bit worse and make it faster. And so you have to be really rigorous about evaluating these things. I don't know if I have any specific favorites.
Things like add a memory tool. So there's like interaction with like somewhat adding state to RL terms, where you can like store a piece of thing and hopefully retrieve it later. But the problem being sort of how exactly do you encourage the model to actually store good, useful memories that will be useful for later? What do you guys think about like how RL will develop to let you do much more complicated stateful tools?
Well, it's
over,
interesting.
Like,
it feels interesting how much things have moved in the direction of like not everything being in the model versus like the model being able to like take actions that let it do everything, right? Like instead of like having a really good long context model that can do retrieval, it's like, okay, the model now is like really good at just using this tool of retrieval, and that's either search via semantic search or like the way that it was trained, grab.
Like the memory tool is super interesting because there are actually really two tools. Like the first tool is I want to store a memory of like this particular interaction, and the other one is I retrieve it. And memory is quite straightforward to teach to a model. You can just give a reward if retrieving that memory like actually helped in the conversation. Storing that memory is way more complicated because the reward is not dependent on the current trajectory, it's dependent on different trajectories. And that also increases the computation during training, because it means that basically to get good signal from memory, I have to do many rollouts in a bunch of random other trajectories that are completely unrelated.
Yeah, exactly. Like when you're storing something to state that you'll use in a future. When you're doing your rollout to store it, and then subsequent rollout to retrieve it, and apply the reward and back it up to the writing step.
Yeah, it's probably much easier to do like a non-model training way of generating and retrieving memories. We were talking about this the other day, and instead using like the system that Federico describes as like evaluation across like trying all these different ways of generating and using and grabbing memories.
Well, how should we evaluate memories?
I mean, did you have the idea there, or was it Luke?
I think it was Luke, actually. Because of the credit assignment problems Federico mentioned, it is really hard to like actually backpropagate into the memory storage mechanism. So instead of that, you get a benchmark of, let's say, like 500 examples of like stuff agent is supposed to do and a way to check whether it did it. And then you just experiment with different like rules and heuristics and prompts for like when to store a memory and when to forget it. And you just measure how well each of those does. And that's not enough examples to backpropagate into something, because it'll just very quickly learn to like reward hack on them. But if you have like a system of heuristics, it can maybe help you find the best one.
Yeah, I wonder if things will look like memories make sense to do in the short term. I wonder if that's something that will persist for the next year, or will it be some kind of more long context mechanism like Jacob described, where maybe it sees all your previous chats and can kind of strengthen.
What do you guys think of previous chats mattering versus all the previous PRs the user has?
There's two kind of different things, right? Previous chats feels like a lot of the time, well, there's some similarities, some differences, right? Like one thing that you get from previous chats, which you don't get from previous PRs, is like actually doing things and seeing like how your environment reacts, right? And then you can kind of update from there in a way that you don't quite get with PRs. PRs are just kind of demonstrations. Yeah, I think they're both useful for different things. Like, I mean, also you just like are using things that like you never really CNPRs, like you're seeing like the terminal, you're seeing how like the linter reacts and how like your auto formatter, stuff like that.
It does seem like you can get some like similar personalization from previous PRs. Like if you have a bunch of PRs in a code base, you can kind of get a sense of like what kind of change, like this sort of, there are certain stylistic jumps you have to make in a code base to make certain edits. You could learn to do those regularly.
Yeah.
Like first I change this file, then I change that file.
Yeah.
I'm very hopeful about the whole long context story because I mean, I sort of hate to be the compute guy, but the new generation of GPUs really make long context very easily. Like the GB200 NVL72 architecture allows to do very long context quite easily in two ways. One, because you have these 72 GPUs that are all interconnected in the NVLink mesh, you can do tensor parallelism that is above the sort of 8 GPU mesh. And what that allows you to do is you can reduce the number of attention heads per device where you store the KVs. In addition to that, the sort of like Grace CPU allows you to have this unified memory on which you can store the KVs, and therefore that allows you to store a much larger number of KVs per device.
Yeah, I mean, the really cool thing that you could do is, we've heard of people trying this, is you actually don't need to store your KVs on the GPU memory, right?
Mm-hmm.
And you may be able to incur like next to no slowdown because you can basically interleave computation with then loading the next time it goes through attention, loading those into GPU.
Yeah, when you get to like layer 0, you start offloading from the CPU the KV that you need at layer 1. And so it's basically free. You never need the KVs, the full KVs to be on your GPU memory, except when you actually get to the layer.
Yeah, but I mean, this will only scale to like what, like 1 million contexts? Like you're still gonna have to pay this like quadratic cost, and that's always gonna like you can get over like the cost of just like literal memory.
Yeah, but it's still sort of like, if you make your parallelism right, it should still be like 72 times cheaper, right? Because if you shard the attention heads correctly.
It'll be 72 times cheaper, but 72 times cheaper for this like massive n squared blow up. And so like maybe you need like the million context with all these, like people are adding all these constant factor things to make it better, right? Like sliding window every so often, maybe sharing. I mean, NSA is another great one. It's a big constant factor, but it is a constant factor.
What do we think about document
Oh yeah.
level attention?
We love it.
Yeah, we call it squid attention because we envision it as a squid where each document is like a different tentacle.
Oh, is that why?
Why did you think?
I don't know. I had no idea.
Who came up with the name squid attention?
Lucas.
It's not a very Lucas name. The idea with squid attention is you basically want to independently attend to each document. Like each document will independently attend to itself, and then at the very end, you then attend to everything. And the reason this is good is you can now kind of swap out documents. If you like care about like 10, 20, 30 documents, I can then just go and cache the keys and values of each of these documents independently and never have to repay the prefill costs. And I can just sub them in inference time. And this is like really useful for like all kinds of features in the product, right? Like for TAD, it's really useful for when you're retrieving things and want to do it quickly. For agent, again, when you're using semantic search, when you're reading files, this would be like immensely useful.
So I think we brought this up in the beginning, but like optimizing a lot for sort of test usage is like one way that RL has initially been done. But do you guys have crazy ideas for how you should optimize more for real world usage where humans are using the thing that is not just optimizing for test coverage?
Like, what do you mean by that?
For the most part, right, RL is being done to finish a bunch of test cases. And for the most part, what we care about is not actually the model doing test cases. We want it to be very good at like, I don't know, add console logs across the file. We want it to be good at all sorts of things that are more sort of human-centric than they are for like sort of finish a particular small task and pass a bunch of tests. This is maybe an indictment of SweetBench, which I know Federico does not like.
Yeah, I mean, so like if we want to get sort of these more, they're sort of like more human rewards that kind of get to like taste, like you want code quality or maybe like, yeah, like printing out the right thing. It seems like to get that, what you will need to do is like get some real signal from real humans in the environment. Did the user like the changes the agent made? or maybe some proxy for that based on like whether they accepted the edits or.
Yeah, I mean, I think there's like probably a lot to do with like just looking at what the ground truth change the user made was, and then from that, getting a good sense of like if when you re-roll out the agent, it did something similar. Because like the user will go in and like if it's wrong, they'll just like do something different. I think there are a lot of cool things too you can do when you have something that runs in the background, right? And you can, for example, have it take 3-4 attempts at the problem, try a bunch of different models, try a bunch of different like make the temperature high, and then choose like I'll just go through all the options that Cursor provides, and I'll choose the one that works, right? That's a really good signal for training a reward model.
Sort of amazing how the passat k, which is like the proportion of times the model got it correct out of k tries, is so much higher than the passat 1, which is how many times it got it on the first try.
There are tricks you can do even without like a great oracle or even a reward model of being able to then go, maybe not get all the way to the passat k, but close the gap a little.
Yeah. So like if you sample multiple, you could take a majority vote, or you could like have a reward model that selects the best one, and you can kind of close the gap a little bit.
If we did have the reward signal, like a lot of data on the reward signal of like there are that many rollouts, users always choose one of 2, one of 3. Yeah, how would we do RL differently? Would we train a reward model just against that signal and just focus on that?
Yeah.
Like the other nice thing is if your reward model sees the ground truth, right? It kind of like knows more than the original model, or like it knows more than the policy,
and,
right?
You can't saturate it, right? Because the problem about RL against reward models in general is that after about 200 steps, you're sort of done. The reward keeps going up, but the model actually doesn't improve.
Why can't you saturate the one that sees the ground truth?
Well, at some point, you're definitely going to saturate it. But since it's grounded in some reality, my sort of hypothesis is that it's going to saturate much later.
Yeah, the problem with reward models is like, the reward will go up forever, but like the real reward you care about will go up and then down. But if we're closer to the thing we care about, maybe people are making a real decision in the loop then.
Sorry, I was just gonna say, like, do you think then that it'll be worse? Like, so would it be worse to then trade a reward model against this like really clean signal versus having the reward model that can like see the ground truth?
Well, if you have the opportunity to retrain the reward model, then it's sort of there is no issue, right?
So you think then if we can retrain that, like choosing between pairs reward model, that would be a better path than like the ground truth conditional.
And I mean, it turns out that we have basically infinite human feedback. So we are in a good spot there.
Yeah, we're in this interesting position where for many of these models, we are the interface between the model and the real world, at least to the extent that the model is used for coding. And so in some sense, this should be our job, is to make the model like match what people want in the real world.
Yeah, I think there's like a trade-off between like, if you can take infinite samples against the real world, you can just optimize that and it'll be great. But if you have sort of a constraint, like those samples cost a lot, you need to think more. And maybe we need to bring in a reward which has the ground truth or something like that, so we can optimize more offline without real users. But
do we think it's within the realm of possibility to like roll it out, like to actually get real reward signal from the agent model by rolling it out to users very frequently? What's the reason not to do that? Jacob might have some opinions.
I think we should do it.
You think we should do it?
Well, I think to the extent, the way I put it is the shorter you can make the loop between a new model being trained and it starting to interact with the real world, the better your results will be.
I'm more bullish on using a reward model and just retraining that more frequently.
Yeah. Like if you do it every couple days, maybe there's enough diversity there.
Did you all see the thing from OpenAI's retrospective blog post on the sycophancy, where they blame the fact that they trained on thumbs up, thumbs down for the model starting to become sycophantic?
Thumbs up, thumbs down. Yeah, definitely is a terrible signal, I can imagine. Because it's biasing the distribution, right? Towards this like cohort of users that would press thumbs up, thumbs down.
Yeah, I would never press it.
It's an eval. I think it's like an eval.
What do you think about people that there are probably some percentage of users that just put thumbs down or thumbs up on like opposite feedback? Just to mess up with people.
Well, the sycophancy would imply that there is like a kind of thing that it's pointing in the direction of, right? It didn't go into like nothing.
Yeah, I mean the feedback has to be aligned with the user. right? Like you need to get feedback in places where the user is willing to give you feedback, because they're incentivized
Otherwise, it's a
to.
proxy. Yeah.
Yeah.
Like you want it as close to like what's really helping the user as possible.
Yeah, you want to really truly optimize for like the smile of the user.
We want.
Wait, I didn't even realize that. I didn't see that.
They put it in the post. Yeah.
It's because of that.
Well, it's because of that many things, but they said that was maybe like one of the main factors. I think they said something like that.
One real use we could have is like we have the model selector. Like if they switch off of our model, that could be like a real world signal of like, are they happy with what the results we're providing? Yeah.
That's no I like Jacob's signal the best, right? You know what I'm talking about?
Oh, just whether the code sticks around.
No. This is the long-term signal that you want.
Oh, just if they churn from cursor, you don't reinforce it. Yeah. We want people to stick around and be happy.
Well, I wonder if we can use churning actually as a way of deriving a reward, right? Like we can, like churning is the ground truth thing. Like we want to like optimize for, minimize churn, and then like can we use that to like predict a reward from like shorter term signal?
Just bias variance trade-offs all the way down.
One sort of similar question on this, and it was like, I feel like all of this debate has been centered around this sort of like outcome-based thing, but the outcome-based thing really was reinforced around the time of R1. And for a long time, people were really into these process reward models, but
what happened with process reward models?
And then PRMs, they're all gone. What happened, Charlie?
So the problem with like PRMs, as they were sort of have been practiced, where you just pass the trajectory to a model and you get a score at each step, is like models aren't that accurate at just like providing a score, especially intermediate steps. It has to like make a prediction about like for certain tasks, like will this lead to the right answer? And so what happens is like once you apply optimization pressure against this reward model, this verifier model, it like you can only optimize for a little bit. It's similar to the problem we're talking about. But if you have these ground truth signals, you can just optimize forever, like math answers. And as a result, you take like 10, I think DeepSeek R1 took 10,000 RL steps. Most RLHF pipelines only do like 100. Once you can do 10,000 RL steps, the model can start to learn like truly interesting behaviors that are very different from where it started. And so, yeah, it really is just about like how much optimization can you apply against it. And with a PRM, you can apply some, but it's limited. It's not nearly as much as you can with these true outcome rewards.
And it becomes worse as many steps you take, right?
Yeah,
so like in a multi-step scenario, you take 50 tool calls, it becomes sort of harder.
Yeah.
It's also why people are being more using the variants of PPO like GRPO or RLU, because the value model is sort of bottlenecked on your trajectory.
Yeah, so like for hard tasks like math and code, I think, just expecting the model to produce a good value, it's just like a hard cognitive task. They struggle with like providing really accurate values. And so, yeah, people do GRPO, you just like do the brute force multiple rollouts to get a value. And that's like much closer to the ground truth. Yeah.
I may have missed the first part, but like, that makes sense for like process reward models versus like true outcome reward. But what about like process reward models versus like outcome reward models?
So like a process reward, actually, like if you compare head to head, like a reward model that's just producing a reward at the end versus one that has like these intermediate steps and maybe you're doing search against it, like there's an advantage there. But it has the same problem of like but in both cases you can only optimize so far.
Does that mean we're going to train process rewards? Like, wouldn't that mean like, okay, we kind of decided like one of the reward signals we'll chase after is reward models that we like retrain after so often. Like, should we train process?
Yeah, it could make sense. I think like
the process reward models.
Yeah, like if we want to squeeze out every bit of like information we can get from like the each round of user data, like it could probably give us some win there.
So I guess that moves us to the infrastructure question. Many of you have been involved in building the RL infrastructure. Any interesting thoughts there? Yeah. What is good RL infrastructure?
One thing that is interesting about RL infrastructure is just it's naturally more complex than training infrastructure because it builds up on it. Like everything that you use to do the forward and backward for just SFT or pre-training, you need that to be performant for RL. The other interesting thing is now you also have the inference component. And the inference component also has to be optimized in this regime where you don't really care about latency like you do for your users. You care about throughput. You care about getting as many rollouts as possible at scale. And for algorithms such as GRPO, it's also even more interesting because you have one prompt and you are generating many completions for this one prompt. And then eventually you're going to backward on all of these completions for that one prompt. And for math, people in open source don't really care about this fact, because in math, most people in open source optimize for like these math tasks. You have like these very tiny prompts, and so you can just forward and backward through all the sequences without that you're recomputing the time the prompt. But for our case, for when you have agents, we have like these massive prompts, and so we cannot afford to backward through all of these rollouts that share the same prompt. And so you start to make optimizations where you overlap more with the inference server, where you start maybe like you already have the prompt from the data loader, and you start getting the KVs from that prompt, while the inference server on the rollouts come back. You already have the KVs, so you only have to forward through that the rollouts that have came back. And then when you get to the backward, you sort of are already prepared the KVs for your prompt, and so you can reuse those. And only
I don't know, guys. Like, I'm not really getting a whole lot out of this because I don't understand it, but that's okay. My small
What did
brain,
you think when? What did
small little puny brain?
We got
do begin tonight with the new and horrific images after the firebomb attack in Colorado.
Left McDonald's drive-through right now.
What's up, guys?
Welcome to the Pearly Davis Show. Welcome.
I got like a sound.
today we're reacting to.
Oh, it's a reaction.
Riverside's going to help you
Do
edit
we
your
have a
podcast.
reaction of a reaction video? Just kidding. Just kidding.
I got like a.
This is a timeline.
Very busy few days in AI. Japan just introduced a new Darwinian algorithm that modifies its own.
I want to start with some.
Oh, yeah. I
wanna
wanted to listen to this.
I want to start with.
But give me a second. I'll be right back.
something that I think people don't know about you,
Okay.
which is that, not that many people know about you, which is that you've actually been at OpenAI longer than Sam Altman, the CEO and
Yes.
co-founder of OpenAI. And you both came from Y Combinator, this famous startup accelerator. So I was just curious, after 10 years, what of Y Combinator is in the DNA of OpenAI?
Yeah. Yeah. Well, not many people know this. I hired Sam actually. Just kidding. But it's the kind of the YC DNA that is infused in OpenAI. Our chief strategy officer, also Jason Kwan, came from Y Combinator. And if you really think about what AI is at its core, right, it really is this entirely new foundation. It's this new kind of platform of technology. And that means that there's a lot of things that are going to get built. And so if YC was kind of the expression of all the things that kind of could have gotten built in the kind of software 2.0 era of technology, OpenAI, I think, is kind of the platform in which a lot of new things will get built in the AI era. And we take a venture mindset as much as we can to how we think about what it is that we do. We try and let a lot of things, a lot of flowers bloom. We try and run a lot of experiments. We have kind of a research mindset in that sense. People don't know actually why OpenAI started as a YC research project way back when. And it, I think we're trying to be unconstrained kind of in our thinking and really focus on like, how, if this really works, right? If it goes well, what kind of upside is there for us? And so you have to have, I think, a venture mindset almost in how you think about technology when you're in a new phase.
So OpenAI was on the front page of the Wall Street Journal today because of this great scoop my colleagues had about how Elon Musk was upset that there's this big data center in Abu Dhabi that OpenAI is involved in and he was left out of. And I think this project is really fascinating. It's part of this big Stargate AI infrastructure project that has made a lot of headlines. But in the announcement, it says that this is about building democratic AI. And so, I used to live in Abu Dhabi, wonderful place, wonderful people, not a democracy. So I'm curious, why would that be the first place you would build it? And what about this tension between your goals of democratic AI and working with countries that are not democracies?
Yeah. So the launch in the UAE is part of an initiative actually that we launched called OpenAI for Countries. And I think it's worth zooming out a little bit actually and talking about what is OpenAI for Countries. So one of the challenges that we have at OpenAI, and one of the interesting things we've seen in deploying AI, is the demand we see for the technology transcends kind of individual level demand or company level demand. It's actually, in a lot of cases, kind of national level demand. And I think it's because countries realize that AI is going to be a critical component of their future, of their competitiveness, of economic growth, of their ability to offer services to citizens, of the way people engage with computers. And there's a real fear that countries have of not wanting to be left behind. And so I think when we've kind of done these world tours, we do these kind of multi-week world tours. And one of the things that we kept hearing consistently was everyone kind of wants their own version of a Stargate, right? They want to make infrastructure investments in their country. They want to figure out what the jobs of the future are. They want to be able to offer AI to citizens in an unrestricted way. And so we at OpenAI now have the challenge of what does it mean to build that program and serve that level of use? So it's still pretty experimental. The UAE will be kind of the first experiment somewhat. They're a very technology forward and technology led country. Obviously have a lot of awareness of how to build infrastructure. They've done an amazing job building infrastructure in Abu Dhabi and Dubai. And so, it will be the first version of it. I hope, hopefully not the last. But it's going to be a learning process for us, which includes, by the way, how we administer AI and how we serve the models that we serve in ways that are consistent with, with OpenAI's principles and values. And we do believe that, the core of it has to be about democratic AI. It has to be about making sure that the rail.
Why does it have to be democratic AI? Huh? Why do you get to determine? What if somebody wants a monarchical AI or something? Huh?
That AI and all the kind of surrounding technologies get built on are fundamentally, is fundamentally AI that upholds a set of democratic values.
So I used to work at a newspaper in Abu Dhabi, and they have these red lines where you can't say certain things, right? Like you can't criticize the royal family, for example. I assume when ChatGPT is rolled out to all the citizens of the UAE as part of that deal, which is kind of an amazing part of the deal, that those red lines will be part of ChatGPT in the UAE. Is that a safe assumption?
Well, we don't know. We've got to work on this together in partnership with the country, and somewhat in partnership with the U.S. government as well. I think what I can tell you is things that really are important to us are, one is, we've got to be able to enable access to people. Two is we really take security behavior very seriously, and we really do want people to have as much of an unrestricted level of access as we can enable. And for us, it's really a learning experience. It's about how do we integrate it into the healthcare system, the education system. How do we help the country and the government offer services to citizens more efficiently than they do? So all those things are in scope, and we're just at the beginning of this, but
Should I switch to Monday CRM? Updating this field is so confusing.
More to come.
So ChatGPT has been growing super fast. I'll rattle off some stats here. 5 billion monthly visits last month, right? Up from 3.1. 250 million weekly active users, or it's 500, sorry, active users. And the enterprise business, which you've really been focusing on, had 2 million paying customers a few months ago. So that would suggest there's a lot of room to grow the enterprise part. So can you help us understand how much of OpenAI's current business is enterprise and how you see that moving over the next, say, 5 years?
Yeah, so enterprise obviously has a little bit of a different growth curve than consumer. Any person in the world can pick up ChatGPT and use it at their will, and certainly we've seen that. 500 million people using it every week has been kind of a crazy ride for us. Businesses obviously have a different need set, right? There's a different level of adoption, a different rate of growth. We are growing quite fast in the enterprise. So at current, actually, ChatGPT Enterprise and our kind of surrounding ChatGPT work products are at about 3 million seats, so up from 2 million in February. So quite a bit of growth, about 50% growth in 3 months. And the demand we see is off the charts. And I think what we're starting to see really are diverse and interesting examples of how ChatGPT and tools like it are starting to penetrate in the enterprise, in education, in healthcare. Some examples, we work very closely with CSU in California. We've deployed ChatGPT, or we'll deploy it to about 500,000 students in California. So it'll be kind of the first AI-powered university system, I think, in the country, which is super exciting.
That's pretty cool. I'm just interested in how they're going to compete with Google.
Exciting. Used for everything from, curriculum planning, lesson planning, to, job preparation, to, personalized learning. These are all things we're kind of experimenting with in partnership with CSU, all the way to examples like in healthcare, where we work very closely with Moderna, for example. Totally different use case, but you have the same technology that's capable of kind of powering both of these institutions. And so we're excited about it. I think the growth, we're trying to just keep up. We're still a smallish team, but I suspect if we continue to grow at that rate, there's something really special there.
And so how are you competing with these companies like Microsoft and Google that have this whole cloud business behind them, which you don't have? So what is the special sauce that you can offer that they can't?
We really live and breathe our models. There's something really valuable about being that close to the model training process, to the design. We obviously are probably the most active consumers of our own models. We try and build OpenAI on OpenAI as much as we can. And so therein, I think you develop familiarity with how these models work, kind of what are the things they're really good at, what are the things they're not good at. It's very, when they don't work, to call support, because it's like the guy sitting next to you, and to basically kind of do that in a very iterative way. And that really is, I think, the core of it, right? Is AI is a completely new paradigm of product building. How the model gets integrated into the product, into the UX, the UI, all of those things take a tremendous amount of care and a tremendous amount of thought that I think it just is, it's so important to be deeply integrated, tightly integrated with the research. And I think that's kind of what makes OpenAI unique is we really do take that vantage point.
So I think OpenAI has been pretty open about the fact that $200 price point for the consumer product, the sort of top of the line Cadillac, is not a winner, right? You lose money at that $200 price point.
We're doing better now.
Okay.
Yeah.
So if there is any updates, that's interesting. And also, what kind of price points can we think about going forward?
Yeah, well, people thought we were crazy when we introduced a $200 price point. So if anyone here has spent time in consumer technology, especially consumer subscriptions, like $20 is like the magic number. It's like you cannot go above $20 and expect people to pay for something. Typically, people start there and actually try and go down. And everyone asked, by the way, like, how did you guys even come up with $20 as the price point? Like, the answer is like Sam and I were like, I don't know, pick a number. 20 sounds good. Okay, let's do it. And that was kind of how we came up with 200 as well. And the reason, by the way, that we did that, again, very much in the spirit of being experimental, was we saw, if you look at the distribution of use of ChatGPT users, it is highly there's an extreme power law at work. So if you look at the far right side of that graph, there's a handful of people that use ChatGPT at levels that far exceed what the kind of median or average is in the rest of the user base. And so there are these like insane power users that like just hammer the thing all day. And so we were like, well, I don't know, like what is the product for them? And we have real costs when we serve these models. And so we're like, I don't know. They're like, if we want to serve them, like we probably have to charge something like $200 a month. And we kind of like all stared at each other around the room and we're like, should we just launch $200 a month? And we did, and now it's growing very quickly.
Imagine if you dropped straight into your competitor's marketing meeting. Imagine the secrets you'd hear. That's
Any other prices that we can expect?
2,000.
Perfect.
You didn't hear that from me.
Okay, so Sam Altman has said
$2,000 a month.
that AGI is coming in the second Trump administration. Are you still on track for that?
Yeah, I mean, look, AGI is a definitionally challenging thing. The joke is like if you ask 5 researchers at OpenAI what AGI is, you get 7 answers. And so something that feels like AGI, or at least approximates what would be a commonly understood definition of AGI, I think it is possible that in the next 4 years we do approximate something like that. And it's a testament to how fast things are moving and also the cycle we're in right now. And so it's worth spending maybe a second on that is the reasoning models that we're building today are improving at a rate that's dramatically faster than the old paradigm of models. So the GPT series of models that you're probably familiar with, GPT-3, GPT-4, we used to cycle time on those between generations at, call it 12 to 18 months. There are these big pre-training efforts that kind of take time and investment. The O series of models, that's a much more condensed period of innovation. And so for that, it's probably order of months, not years. And so the rate of change and the ability for these models to generalize, learn in context, and really reason about how to solve hard problems, use tools to do it, it's not yet, I think, a well understood thing. People still kind of use these models very much like chatbots. They're just Oracle systems. But once you kind of enter this more agentic phase of AI, and with the rate of improvement we're seeing in the models, I think you do stand to kind of see this fairly steep takeoff in capability.
And if I'm a CIO trying to plan for this, how do I plan for a post-AGI future? Because I have to plan more than 5 years out.
Yeah, that's the hardest part of our job. We partner closely with enterprises, and I think our disposition when we do that is very much not, hey, we sell you a service. It's, hey, how do you kind of join the journey with us? How do you get on the train with us? Because the thing that we're talking about a year from now is not going to be the thing we're talking about today. And then 2 years from now is not going to be the thing from a year prior. And so it is this fluency that we have to build with the customers that we work with. And we spend a lot of time and care trying to do that and establish that baseline. We work, for example, very closely with Morgan Stanley. We've worked with them for a few years. And for a big legacy financial institution, they're actually remarkably sophisticated in their use of AI. But it took them kind of 2 years to establish that baseline. And so that's a lot of the guidance that we give to enterprises is like, it's not a bad time to just at least start the investment process. Like, you just have to start to build fluency. You've got to build muscle memory in the organization. You've got to just build a familiarity with the rate of change because it's very steep. Unlike past technological, revolutions, it's something that is going to change over time. Cloud computing hasn't changed that much in the last few years. Mobile phones haven't changed that much in the last few years. This is something that will be categorically different in a few years. And so it's the hard part, but it's also the fun part.
So talking about this moment of AGI, we've all reported that in your partnership with Microsoft, key partner, there's this provision where basically Microsoft is not going to get access to your tech after you declare AGI. Do you imagine some future where they will be able to participate financially or as a business in a post-AGI OpenAI technology, given what early and important partners they were?
Yeah, well, I would say, look, we tend to not discuss, terms of our engagements with partners. Two things though. One is they're a meaningful owner in OpenAI, and so regardless, they're along for the ride, and they've been an amazing supporter of the company as an investor and as a partner, and I suspect that will continue. The partnership will evolve, but I expect the substance of what we really set up to succeed 5 years ago will continue. The second thing I'll say is we've got to kind of take a whole of company approach and somewhat kind of a whole of ecosystem approach to making AGI work. One of the things we didn't appreciate when we set up OpenAI really early on is just how externalized the process of building OpenAI and AGI is going to be. We kind of thought we could go off in a lab and if we thought hard enough and focused hard enough and had enough computers, we would kind of go invent the thing and then wake up one day and be like, here you go, everyone, we have AGI. And the reality has been very different. It's been this highly iterative, highly collaborative approach to building that takes an understanding of what do users care about, what do businesses care about, how do people engage with these systems, what are they really good at, what are they not good at, right? How do we actually hill climb on those problems? And so, I suspect that's not going to change. And Microsoft's been an amazing partner in helping increase that exposure to the world and helping us improve the models, given what they understand about their customers. So it's a solid foundation for that. And I suspect, many years to come of great partnership.
Reaching your goals is closer than you think with Stark State College Akron. How do we know? Because we want.
Okay. You've led a lot of these deals with publishers, including, one of the deals that our paper and our company has with OpenAI. How does OpenAI think about how to value the content the publishers have, both for training and for inference? And how do you decide what you need to license and what you don't?
Yeah, so we have now a whole handful of partnerships with different publishers and different news and media organizations. Those have been kind of amazing partnerships in that, I think news information was really one of the first areas that AI touched, right? It was, all of a sudden you've got these systems that have the world's accumulated knowledge stored somewhere in their mathematical weights. And people kind of use them differently, right? It's like you have this kind of infinite learning machine. And inevitably that kind of touches external content, right? It's like you want to be able to say, okay, I want to learn about what the tariffs are, right? I want to be able to learn about what's going on in Asia, right? I want to learn why what's going on in South America, right? At this exact moment. And so part of the challenge we had early on was our models have a cutoff date, right? We train them and, once they're done training for the most part. And so their knowledge only goes up to a certain point. And so we started doing these deals basically to kind of extend the model's knowledge into current events, into news and more kind of current media. But also because it gives the models color, it gives them, perspective that they don't have. They're averages of human preference. And so, but you as a reporter may have a different or unique vantage point on something that actually supplements, someone's understanding of a topic. And we want to be able to enable that experience because these models are also really good at directing people to that content. And that's what we do in practice today in search. I think the misconception somewhat was that we were doing these deals as training deals. We were not actually really explicitly doing these deals as training deals. I think if you added up all the content in the world from all of the publishers and kind of put it in a bucket and handed it to OpenAI and said, here you go, train on this, it would amount to something like less than 1.1% of the total content that we need to train a model like GPT-4, let alone GPT-5 or anything better. So it's not a meaningful source of training data for us. I think what is really meaningful is it's a source of reference information. It's a source of it's a connection point to the external world, and I think that's an important thing to have.
Do you ever imagine doing it with local publications?
We do work very closely with local publications. So we have a variety of efforts that are really actually meant to support local publishers, because that's in some sense kind of the hardest information to find. If I live in Topeka, Kansas, what's going on in Topeka is kind of as relevant as anything else, right? And one of the things we hear often as a use case is people saying oh, I want to plan my weekend. I've got a 2-year-old and a 5-year-old, and I want to give them activities to do over the weekend. And it's actually important to know kind of what's going on in your community and whatnot. So even purely for the value of our users, that type of engagement is critical. And we're working with Axios and a few others on initiatives meant to actually help use AI to revitalize a lot of the local news industries that today are kind of facing some structural difficulty.
So we've heard that you've been out in Hollywood a lot, talking to a lot of folks, but there haven't been many deals out of Hollywood. Why not?
So a lot of what we do is engagement, right? I think, to start any conversation with AI is kind of it starts with an education process. Like, this stuff's all really new. There's a baseline level of trust and understanding that you have to build with partners before you engage, just as to what it is that you're doing. Like, what is it you're building? Who are we as OpenAI? What do we stand for? And I think with a lot of the things that kind of touch Hollywood, so video modeling, et cetera, there are things that are still kind of in their infancy as technologies. We released a model called Sora, is a generative video model, was the first really kind of high quality generative video model to come out. And we really released the first version as kind of a research preview. You can use it, you can access it today and people can play with it, but it's not meant for production level content. It's not, in my opinion, good enough for that yet. So we'll look at.
He ain't wrong there. VO3.
Better, yeah, of course. But it's just starting a dialogue and starting a process of understanding how are people wanting to use these tools? How do the creative communities think about these tools? For the most part, we've actually been able to, I think, enhance the creative workflow. We work very closely with a lot of filmmakers who've started trying to use Sora to make films. They all went from kind of skeptics at first, I think, to at the end kind of saying, there's no way I would ever make a film without actually wanting this thing sitting by my side. So that's valuable learning for us, and that's kind of the phase we're in.
So we talk a little bit about agents. You've been releasing some agents, this Operator one, which is a research preview. And we all know what it means when OpenAI releases a research preview, right? A low-key research preview. Yeah. That's what ChatGPT was.
Never worked out for us.
But I'm curious, what has the usage been and uptake, and what are people really using them for? How much usage are you seeing of the agents, both for coding and other stuff?
Yeah, so agents is a little all over the map. So Operator specifically, very early. And for those of you who don't know, Operator is a system that basically allows an AI to use a computer the way that like a person would use a computer. So it can click around. It's got like a mouse and a keyboard. It can, move around, control applications, control the web, and so on. It is really early for that type of agent, at least. But we think it's going to be a critical part of the future. And the right way to kind of roughly, in my opinion, think about agents is you're going from an AI system that has what I would call kind of wide and diverse factual knowledge to AI systems that have wide and diverse ability to reason. So they can think really hard about a problem and actually come up with, in some sense, new ideas or new knowledge about a topic, and also can think about how to solve a problem. So critically, in their chain of thought, you can actually see how they start to map out a strategy to go actually execute a task. That's all well and good, but it's all kind of like, it's all words basically until you actually let the systems go off and use tools to do the thing. So that's kind of the state we're in right now. It's kind of the phase we're in now, is this transition from what would be kind of purely chatbots and reasoning models into what really are, more agentic AI systems that can use tools, solve problems, execute tasks, write code, control computers, and basically string all these capabilities together end to end to actually solve fairly complex problems.
So you were part of the deal to buy part of Johnny Ives, or to buy the rest of Johnny Ives' company, IO, and bring them aboard OpenAI. And Johnny Ive, of course, the famous designer who designed all these beautiful Apple products. It seems, I was just at the Apple store yesterday getting a new iPhone, and the salesman was so excited he preloaded the new action button with ChatGPT. But it's very clear that there still is a button, right? You are still basically at Apple's mercy. And I'm curious if the future of OpenAI is going to be one where you will need to have a direct relationship with your customer, not through some other tech company, but direct. Is that necessary for success?
Tell me if this seems familiar. On the screen here, I've got a list of things that you've probably done. Start a marketing agency, spend 2 weeks building a website, post on your Instagram, send a few cold emails.
Well, what I would say is I think there's like an incredible opportunity to build like an entirely new class of devices. And I think every time you kind of get a change in the underlying computing platform, you tend to get kind of a corresponding change in the types of devices people use to engage with that platform. So when we kind of originally had the mainframe, but the PC was invented, turned into mobile phones. on-prem systems, big monolithic cloud, on-prem systems turn into cloud systems, and distributed architectures. Same thing with AI. You've got an entirely new substrate that really lets you do things that you couldn't do with the more traditional kind of computing methods of years past. And so we think that there is going to be a kind of a corresponding set of devices that gets built. I think for us, what it represents is actually an interesting challenge of how do you now start to build AI that really is truly personal. ChatGPT is great, right? But it's to your point, it's just an app on your phone. Like you have to kind of go in and you've got to kind of input something. There's a lot of inertia to kind of be able to use it and get value from it. But so much of like the way that we actually engage with people and do things happens in the real world, right? It happens in places that don't involve us necessarily just staring at a screen. And so I think a lot of the inspiration for the types of things that we feel like we can build will be the types of systems that are more ambient, right? They're more, and in some sense almost feel more personal. They detach you a little bit from having to always be looking at a screen. I think there's a place for a phone, and I think there's a place for apps and whatnot, but the way that we kind of look at the problem statement is very much an emphasis on personal computing and how we kind of build this ambient computing layer. And it's interesting from an AI research perspective too, because there's a lot that we have to do to develop models to succeed in that environment. Like the real world is super messy. And so how do you have models that kind of run this parallel track, for example, of like social reasoning? How do they know who I'm talking to? Like, how do they know our relationship? Maybe I want to say things to you that I wouldn't want to say to someone else, right? Or maybe there's, if I'm present with family members, the tone of engagement is going to be different than if I'm with colleagues. All that stuff is like actually part of the intelligence spectrum. And I think you have to kind of have a device that is going to be acknowledging of the fact that we are going to want to understand that better.
So, do you know what the device is?
I have no idea.
There's nothing we could say to squeeze it out of you.
Someone asked me earlier if it was an orb.
It seems kind of like maybe an Alexa, that from what we know so far. Close?
No comment, but and this is exploratory. I mean, it is truly experimental. It's truly kind of cutting edge in that sense. And I think there's going to be a lot of versions that we go through before we feel good about it.
Okay. One last thing, so we don't have much time left, but I want to end on ROI. I know, but I feel like this is really where the rubber
Wall Street Journal,
hits.
so
It's
yeah.
the Wall Street Journal. This is where the rubber hits the road. So I've been constantly searching for examples of productivity gains by people using AI. And I was asking ChatGPT today, and it was like, oh, here's NVIDIA's stock price. I'm like, no, I don't want people paying for AI. I want people using it and getting productivity gains out the back end. So what are some of the best examples, and how do people measure the ROI of these things that you're trying to sell them?
Yeah. This is actually one of the hardest things that we have to deal with is AI being kind of this enabling layer of technology, right? It's actually, everyone uses it a little differently. And in some sense, you get varying level of acceleration. So you get, 2% here, 10% here, 2x there, and it's very spiky. So just to give you maybe some data points that might help contextualize it, most startups now, I think, if you kind of flew to San Francisco and took a poll, would say that the majority of code they're writing is actually written either with, in partnership with or completely by AIs. That is an amazing thing, right? AI is amazingly good at coding. And so the types of productivity gains you get, and these are all it's kind of all anecdata, so it's all self-reported, but, would be, probably software engineers saying something between a 50% speed up and a 2x speed up in their kind of total output. And that number is only going up. You see similar things kind of ancillary to that. So things like data science, quantitative fields like trading, where people have to process a lot of information quickly, a lot of the same benefit. Interestingly, actually, creativity also is an amazingly kind of powerful area for AI. So the way that creatives are using the systems to improve their rate of iteration, kind of use it as an idea partner, as a thought generation partner, has been an accelerant to that field. And then there are others where I think the more kind of agentic version of AI is going to have to exist before you see the real speed up. You're going to need systems that can manage across a lot of other pieces of software, a lot of data, a lot of context, and then be able to use tools to kind of use all that effectively to solve problems. So, it's varied, it's diverse. We get asked all the time for, give me the ROI case. And usually what I say is, do you use ChatGPT yourself? And of course, the answer is yes. And I always say, well, it's what's your personal story, and just go and understand that across your team, find the power users, distill what they're kind of using it for across your functions, and try and kind of tell that story as qualitatively as you can.
Cool.